Good evening, everyone. This is the City of Shelbyville Mayor and City Council study session. It is Thursday, January the 2nd at 6 p.m. Everybody had a good new year coming in. First item on our agenda tonight is public comments. Do we have any, Lisa?
We do not have anyone signed up. Would anybody like to make any public comments about any item that affects the city tonight? Does it look like it, Mr. Mayor?
All right, thank you. We get, of course, and we're supposed to get calls from the folks that we represent. And I wanted to bring up a couple of items tonight. One of them, I had talked to the general manager of Shelbyville Power, Water and Sewer about water outages in the the western portion of our city. We've had 3, I think, in the last 6 months. They've been anywhere from 5-6 hours to probably 7 or 8 hours, I guess has been the longest one. And we talked about the issues and what had happened and those kind of things like that. Of course, we want to keep our eyes and ears open. And when I talked to Jason, it's hard to inspect those water lines under the ground and things like that. We had an inspection program with Duck River when I worked for them and replaced poles and wires as needed. But he said that they're looking at it and watching over it and things like that. But if you get any complaints or situations like that, please let us know, and we will report them directly if they hadn't been reported already to Shelbyville Power, Water and Sewer. I had also gotten a call from out in the western portion, Union Heights, about natural gas. They wanted natural gas out there since that subdivision was built. And I think we have a franchise with a gas company, and they're saying they told them all these years that they cannot serve them. So we need to probably take a look at that as a council and see what we can do. I don't know if there's even any other natural gas company that could serve them that we have in the county or in the city itself. So I wanted to bring those 2 items up. Anybody else have something that I haven't mentioned that might be of interest to folks? Okay. All right. If not, then the staff reports. We'll ask our city manager to update us on everything. Scott?
Thank you, Mayor. Everybody's returned from the holidays, and we've had a lot of sicknesses and illnesses too. But fortunately, everybody's getting back up to speed, and we're looking forward to 2025. And to kick it off on a strong positive note, the Exxon Electric will have their grand opening ribbon cutting on January 29th at 9:30 a.m. out at their facility. And really encourage everyone to try to attend, because we're cautiously optimistic that Governor Lee may be out. We're pretty confident the ECD commissioner and deputy commissioner and others will be there. So it'll be a milestone. Using Exxon Electric words, your presence would be greatly appreciated as we celebrate this important milestone. So another issue I just want to put on everybody's radar, and of course a lot more information to be forthcoming. Right now we're looking at hosting our 2025 strategic planning session. It's the all-day session where we go with goals and objectives for the future of the city. And now we're looking at March 19th or 26th. We'll coordinate with them tasks, but more importantly, we'll check with each and every one of you all to make sure them dates are available for you. And Mayor, at this time, that's all I have right there.
All right, sir. Questions for Scott?
A question, I had something on our, growth strategic planning discussion on February 7th. Is that something,
That's the,
is that different than what you're talking?
That's the group meeting between Shelbyville Power,
Oh,
the
okay.
Right.
Municipal Planning Commission, and of course, Mayor and City Council.
Okay.
Anyone else have a comment? Good to see everybody tonight. Discussion items. The first item is the proposed charter changes, and I'm gonna ask Scott if he would kind of give us a briefing on that. We've talked about that, for the last couple of 3 months, well, maybe even longer than that. But Scott, would you update us, please?
Yes, sir, Mayor. As you just stated, we've had multiple meetings on this issue, and including a joint meeting with officials from Shelbyville Power, Water, and Sewer System. And what we came out of that meeting with is the most important thing to do if we're going to change it is simply to change the term ratepayer to account owner, which will allow the inclusion of spouses and other adult household members, as long as they contact Shelbyville Power to ensure their name is placed on the account. Now, there was a lot of discussion during all these meetings, that we all sat down as a staff, and this is what we came out of it with, to get ready to present the MTS so we can have a resolution for your all consideration next week.
Okay.
And I do need to add, if no action is taken by next Thursday's meeting, it'd be very, very challenging to try to get on the General Assembly's agenda this year.
The General Assembly's about to get it back in session. So, all right. Along those lines, do we have anything else along those lines that you would like to discuss with it? Or anyone else like to bring up?
I'd like to bring up what's sitting in front of you is ethics discussions items, as well as our current code of ethics policy we have in the charter, in our ordinances. As I've been pushing for the charter change, some of the charter changes, I guess it's well and good to have ratepayer defined. We've already got a policy in place that defines it for our benefit for when we appoint a board member to the power board, and just to go through the process and the expense of changing our charter, just to change that one little definition seems to be a waste of the government's time and effort. And I'd like to see more changes, especially you poo-pooed the background checks, but I'd like to see some sort of ethics improvements in our charter, because I think the taxpayers, the average taxpayer out there, or the person in the city that doesn't know anything about city government, out of my 47 years of experience in being appointed and elected, the common knowledge is we're all on the tape, or we're getting something under the table, or we're getting gratuities, or whatever, I don't know whatever you call it, graft, whatever you call it. I'd like to put something in the charter that has ethics, and more teeth in it, more of a rule that citizens have a recourse back to complaints that may come in about one of us. If somebody says, well, you're getting customers. I had that issue with Tony Carey when they bought the airport property out there. I heard it on the street. Some people in this room were quoted that somehow I had a client, that he was a client of ours because of that money that transferred. Hadn't talked to Tony Carey in 30 years. Not a client, never has been, not gonna be, obviously, he's dead. But anyway, nor any of his family members. So those kind of things, if I'd have had a recourse at that time with some sort of outsourced an ethics committee, I could have brought that complaint.
Right.
And we could have found out the result of it, and an independent board could have issued a opinion or review of it and given a recommendation to this body to do something with. Right now, we don't have any outside body. It's all us policing ourselves. It's kind of like the inmates in charge of the prison, if you want to take that example. that's not that we're inmates, but that's an example that, we're in charge of our own ethics investigations, and there's issues maybe that I've gotten complaints on that needs to be in a review board or something. So I would like just as soon not make any charter changes right now and discuss this ethics thing and get it in our charter so we can put something in there with teeth in it. I think there's several benefits. I had in an email to you guys that didn't make it to the cover of this, because this is some of the research I came up with on ethics, was that we could restore some trust in the electorate toward the government officials, both elected and employees. This covers everybody. In addition, our community, as I said earlier, is full of rumors, and a strong ethics procedure, as we implement it, would help the elected officials and provide a vehicle for dispelling just rumors and innuendo. So I put this up for y'all's review. I'm sorry it's kind of last minute, but at the same time, just to change the definition of ratepayer in our charter, which we already have the same policy adopted that the city council is going to follow and that the power board has said they're going to agree with. Me, it's not worth the effort to just change the charter for that one thing. And I'd like to see the ethics discussion items.
Did you say you sent an email? Because I didn't receive anything.
I sent it to the city manager and the city
Okay.
attorney and asked them to print this out
Okay.
along with a copy of my email, but that's, it got lost in the details there, it's fine. But I'll be happy to, that's part of the ethics thing right there.
So we can
I'm
actually,
not supposed to be emailing you guys and discussing policy behind the scenes. We're not supposed to do that. So that's why I sent it to the city manager of the city attorney and request them to just bring it up in a public meeting. So that's part of those ethics things that everybody needs to be trained up on and have to be on the same page.
So you're not proposing to try to do this and squeeze that into this year? This would be, we would push the whole thing another year.
Yeah. I don't see why changing the ratepayer definition is worth the effort. When we've already got a policy in place that's basically states the same thing.
so how urgent is this with Shelbyville Power to get this ratepayer and account owner of record terminology changed? Is that something that we need done prior to next year or this year, as we may turn over a board member or two?
We don't have major changes to the charter. My personal opinion as mayor, if we don't have major changes and ratepayer is acceptable to Shelbyville Power, Water, and Sewer, I just want us to get on the same page. And I missed that meeting, I'm sorry, but I was sick at that time, but, where y'all discussed that. But if that's the only thing we're gonna take before them to change in the charter, I really don't see changing the charter. What do you folks think?
No.
I mean, if it ratepayer is approved by Shelbyville Power, Water, and Sewer, and we have approved it, do you see making any changes at this point?
Eventually, Mayor, the resolution that was approved that gave the city's definition of ratepayer.
Right.
In essence, Shelbyville Power has agreed with that.
Uh-huh.
And our city attorney, and unfortunately due to illness, she's not here tonight, but she said eventually we need to get that into our charter.
Right.
But it is a governing document right now. And Shelbyville Power has also added some lines on the applications and stuff to where multiple people can be a ratepayer.
Where husband and wife can be covered and
Yes.
things like that.
Yes.
That was one of the things we were looking at. If a husband had passed away or wife had passed away and it was in the other's name, but we want to make sure they're taken care of and can move forward, or if they want to be elected to the power board. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. And also to point out, the General Assembly does not take charter changes lightly. So, and I'm not as experienced with charter changes because fortunately throughout my 20 odd years as city manager, I've only dealt with two. And so, but in the two that I dealt with, they want you to have everything ready. They want it to be a unanimous vote. They want to make it clean and clear as possible. So if we still have a little confusion, I agree with you, Mayor, and some of the others I've seen nodding around the table. We may need to really have more thorough discussion before we take anything for our representative here.
When is the next reappointment? When do we have somebody? When is that, Lisa? When?
It would be in May, and this year is the one seat appointment. I believe the gentleman will be Mr. Cruz, William
Oh.
Cruz.
William
It'll just be one person?
Just be one person. And, if I could speak, to the resolution, the first year that this came up after we made the last charter change, that's when we had all the confusion and all the issues.
Right.
And then we did the resolution, the council passed the resolution based on their opinion of what a ratepayer was. And since that time, you know, the process has not been flawed. I mean, we've had a couple of turnovers since then, or a couple of appointments. And, you know, we've worked through it. It does take a little bit more time, and, you know, with Shovel Power, they did have to check a little bit more deeper in their records, but we haven't had any
It looks
disagreements.
like something to me that this council could take care of without it. You know, they come here, they submit their applications and stuff. That's, this council, when we interview and stuff, looks like to me to take care of that.
And
Go ahead.
and if this council wants to not send up the charter changes right now,
Well,
we can work over it over the next few months and get it
Sure.
ready by this next Christmas.
that's exactly right.
So it is a more ideal time to send that stuff up to the legislature. And one more comment on my ethics thing, I did attach City of Franklin, Tennessee, literally I copied their website.
Yeah.
Their method for Tennessee, for citizen input, and how they've got a board set up with external, people that really know their business about ethics, like a judge and several other people on there. So it's just an example. But in other words, there are other cities in Tennessee that have done this. So that was my point of putting that example on there.
Good
So
reading.
I think it may have some real merit if we want to, possibly pursue that.
Anyone else have anything to say?
Now, we've also talked about, but we thought that we would resolve this amongst the council and mayor. And it's nothing against City Manager Collins, but for future city managers and future council members, I think that we definitely need to have more teeth in the game, skin in the game, however you put it, to where we have more input on our, department heads, and our staff, you know, and we can resolve this amongst ourselves. But if it has to go to, and it's not a micromanaging thing.
Right.
It's not a micromanaging thing. It's just, I think that the mayor and council should have a little bit more knowledge of who's going into what position, assistant, you know, that type of thing. What's wrong with that? Am I the only one that seems to feel like that's of importance? That's not micromanaging. That is just knowledge that the council and mayor should be aware of. And we talked about that. So that's something that should be fixed internally. I certainly don't think that should maybe go up north, or go to Nashville.
Right.
But, we really haven't discussed that to put that in place and to put it into gear. But that's my opinion.
And we discussed it, I think, a number of times. We've looked at different things and what might be better, things like that right there, and whether it'd be a plus for the city or not.
I think it would.
Okay.
So what do we do? Just kind of roll over it and
Yeah. Well, as we move forward on the next few months, my opinion would be if we want to adopt something or make a change there, we'll have a few months to look at it and have something, that's legal and something that's, concrete. And when we take it before the legislature, we will look, educated in Shelbyville, Tennessee, and ready to go as far as whatever we make decisions on, that, you know, those changes can be made. But yeah, we don't need to sweep it under the rug. We need to look at it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else?
Just as a housekeeping thing, along with charter changes, I know city manager says he's been through a couple of them. Seems like we've done several of them in Shelbyville too. But I know in discussion with Pat Marsh, when we send up a charter change, he likes to get them in October, November range because he has the state's attorney people review it, and they kind of have some time in October, November, up to Christmas, basically. Once Christmas hits or December, it's legislature time, and every legislator in the country and the state starts sending in little things, and they get tied up, and charter changes, things like this get sort of put on the back burner. So we're kind of, I know we're a little late to the game for that, so that would help set us a timeline for this year. If we say, hey, by September, we're finished with whatever, if we want to make any other changes to the charter. That's probably the timeline we ought to be on, so that he can have it in October, November, and the state people, and then it's sitting there ready to roll January 1st, and they put it on the consent docket, and it's done.
Right.
So,
I agree with that.
just as a little
I agree.
education.
And I knew that they needed more time than what we were probably gonna throw something at them. They've got a whole lot of different bills and things that they'll be dealing with. How does everybody else feel about that? Just work on it in the next few months and try to get something ready by October or September, October this year? How does that sound to everyone? Good?
You ought to make it part of the strategic plan.
Yeah.
That-
Right.
And
Yeah.
rather set the guidelines. of who's responsible for things that they're at.
Fine. Okay. Any other thoughts? All right. Good discussion. Old business. Second and final reading, public hearing, an ordinance of the city of Shelbyville, Tennessee to approve the rezoning of all portions of approximately plus or minus 1.7 acres owned by DCC Strategic Realty Partners, LLC, addressed as 426 Dover Street, and further referenced in Bedford County tax records as tax map 079, parcel 41, and attached as Exhibit A from residential R1, low density residential, to residential R2, medium density residential, and repealing any ordinance or portion of ordinance in conflict therewith. Any discussion on that or any questions for Tom about that one? I think we've been over it before. Anyone? All right, let's go to new business, ordinances. A, an ordinance of the city of Shelbyville, Tennessee to approve the good to be able to talk. An ordinance, and not having to strain, an ordinance of the city of Shelbyville, Tennessee to approve the rezoning of all portions of approximately plus or minus 5.85 acres owned by DCC Strategic Realty Partners, LLC, addressed as 900 Whitthorne Street, and further referenced in Bedford County tax maps as tax map 078 N F parcel 16, and attached as Exhibit A and Exhibit Final Plat from residential R3, medium density residential, to residential R3A, medium high density residential, and repealing any ordinance or portion of ordinance in conflict therewith. I think we've discussed this one multiple times. Anyone have any comments on that or anything for Tom? Tom, you got something to say?
Yes, there were a couple of questions on, the address along with Thorn. I have information on that, as well as the fencing that sections, 904, or 906. I can't remember which, it's a corner lot on with, but I have information on that, if you'd like me to explain those part of it. Oops. So this is Whitthorne Street, 900 Whitthorne. And Planning Commission had a favorable recommendation. There were address concerns along Whitthorne Street, and then the fencing between 906 AB on Whitthorne, as well as 908. Shelbyville Power, actually Jason Reese had watched the last city council meeting, and that was when he first heard of it. They hadn't had any complaints about it, but the street in question is between Shadow Drive, which is just off the edge here, and this road here. In the tax assessment records, you see it listed as Horse Mountain, even though all the parcels are actually addressed as Whitthorne. So Shelbyville Power is actually working with the post office on remedying that, because in all the maps, Google Map shows it as Whitthorne, Apple Map shows it as Whitthorne. It's only in our assessment records and post office maps that shows it as Horse Mountain. And apparently the post office had been, they had their own way of mitigating that. They were sending mail that was addressed to those property owners, whether it was Whitthorne or Horse Mountain. But hopefully they'll be able to correct it. But that was the first time they heard of it, so they're working. Shelbyville Power's working on fixing that. And then the second item about the fencing, I was able to pull the original rezoning application for, if I may go back to this property right here and this property right here were actually before the recent lot combination extended all the way further back. And it was initially a PUD and was rezoned to R3, which is the same as the surrounding neighborhood. In rezoning application, there are no conditions. That would be equivalent to contract zoning, which is illegal. And there's only two jurisdictions that permit contract zoning in Tennessee, and we're not one of them. So this highlighted section was from June 23rd, 2022, which identifies that there would be a discussion for fencing on there. Even during that time period, there was no requirement to have any type of screening fence between R3 zones. So duplex and single family are both considered similar types of uses. So there's not a requirement for it. And even currently, we don't have any type of requirement for screening between there. This application, it's not the same property owner. So I listed out, there's multiple barriers to requiring the applicant developer to actually provide the screening. One is they don't, Tennessee law doesn't allow contract zoning. That would fall more under any type of subdivision, but in this case, that property is not owned by DCC Strategic Partners. It's basically considered an illegal condition to require them to have that. So they may be asked, but they can't be required to actually provide a fencing. Karen Smotherman is the owner of that property, and as in the in the 2022 rezoning, it was mentioned that it would be discussed, but I don't know what the outcome of that, whether they committed to it. Since there's the subdivision itself, it was just a minor subdivision. There were two lots created. There are three, and there wouldn't have been a condition as I couldn't tell from that. I don't think it was actually made it to. I think it was done at administrative level. The subdivision itself. The rezoning was heard by the planning commission, but the subdivision itself looked like it was at administrative level. From what I could tell of the records. There's already a natural barrier of vegetation there. It's not the prettiest one, but there is a natural vegetative barrier there, which if you had multifamily use, it's considered a type of screening. So those were the two comments that were brought up, and for that, two questions on that. And so if there's any questions.
So basically, the owner, the developer, actually, it was just kind of a verbal thing for the fencing?
From the minutes, it only suggests that there would be a discussion. So
There was a discussion.
So as far as any type of commitment There's nothing enforceable on our side, from the city side. The city doesn't have any authority to enforce that.
So going back to the developer is optional.
Yes, they can be asked, we can ask them at the subdivision phase, not necessarily at this phase.
Who was that developer at the time?
Karen Smotherman is the property owner, and I believe she was the one that subdivided it. Let me see if oh, actually, you know what? I brought the copy.
Johnny, or maybe Johnny.
Okay.
It doesn't say in the minutes who the actual applicant was, but I can look that up too. But it was the Smothermans, I believe.
Okay, so numbers are being thrown out. The number of units proposed,
Yes.
Airbnb, no Airbnb. One access road or more access roads.
They would have, well, from the original design, we don't have an updated design. The original concept for the R4 showed a single entrance, and most likely that's what they'll have, is a single entrance into that subdivision. This is a breakdown of the gross density for R3 and then R3A, which is the request. At R3, the zoning right now, the gross density is 33.97. And then the gross density for what they're requesting is 50.96, which is a 27% increase.
They're doing the R3A.
Yeah, that's correct. That's what they're requesting.
And that's how many?
The gross is 50.96, but that is the gross, because you still have to take out any type of public right of way. So it's going to be less, I would say. Well, I was thinking about doing more estimating the net, but I didn't get a chance to do that on this application.
So you have no idea how much less.
I would say, from previous ones, you're probably going to be 25%. That's probably exaggerating. It depends on the design, really.
So the planning commission actually approved the R3A.
That's correct.
Yeah.
They had a favorable recommendation.
Yeah.
I want to go back to my original concerns from last study session, which are the 4 conditions we have for R3A. I want to read from your July staff summary when this was proposed as R4. 2 sentences that stuck out to me. The proposed rezoning is inconsistent with future land uses. This application would not meet the R3A conditions. That was when they were proposing R4 in the staff summary. It said it doesn't meet the R3A conditions. What has changed since July that it now meets the R3A conditions?
The R3A, and this is where, if you look at the future land use map, which is a guide for policy, and that's where you and I had the discussion on bullet point
2.
is it number 2?
Yeah.
Property is corner lot, one of the 2 streets.
Oh, no,
that's
sorry. It was
like-
1. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that,
On an
it's that
arterial
discussion, yeah, it's a discussion about the collector street. And I take the future land use map as a guide, not as the regulations. And I know that wording about being on a collector street, I also look at it as holistically as possible, that you have to the south of it, you have a higher density, even though that's mixed use, that's inconsistent. You have the higher density PUD to the left, those are factored in, and it is I don't want to say it's a guess, but it's, for me, it is about determining making the best estimation. And then one of the things that I changed about that particular comment sheet was written at a time when I've changed the policy at this point. Because of that one instance where there's, we might view things differently in terms of, just how the future land use map is used. And so, what I'm doing now as a policy is just presenting what is in our policies, maps, regulations, what the neighborhood conditions are. And then leaving up to the planning commission to make those decisions as far as what the recommendations are. Because there was a question that came up from just various applicants that maybe I'm influencing, by saying we recommend, by saying staff recommends, that we're influencing the direction of the approval. So rather than doing that, now I'm basically saying, here are the facts. And then from that, the planning commission will make their decision, as well as the council can make their decision from that.
Then just the other point, I'd also noticed in there, this was pre-planning meeting, Shelbyville Power, Water and Sewer, who rarely give comments on a lot of these things. They specifically said density should not be increased due to the traffic conditions. I realize they're not in the traffic business, but for one of our department heads to say
Yes.
they thought this density was too much, that gives me pause for approving.
Yes, and I spoke with John Freeman on Tuesday, and I understand, yeah, his belief, or his opinion is that, see, where am I? Okay, I'm right here. This road here to Barksdale, I'll say Barksdale because that's what that section is, the geometry is.
I drove it twice.
Yeah.
When it first came up, I mean, it's just in bad shape, and to allow 30 more units on a street that's falling apart seems short-sighted at best.
Yes, and I know Public Works was supporting this only because of the developer's commitment to remedy this.
That one intersection, but they're not proposing any remedy on Barksdale, right?
No,
They're not proposing any repaving or
No.
any repairs.
And I don't know from the subdivision application, when the traffic study is generated, what type of improvements will be required from that. I mean, I doubt that there's gonna be any type of improvements along,
Yeah, that'd be unusual.
it would just be
That's
fronting
outside
on it,
the-
yeah,
that's
it would just
outside
be
the scope.
fronting on that, yes.
But that would be the city's responsibility to continue to service the Barksdale area as far as road paving, right?
That's correct.
I mean, the developer has committed to doing the Withorn, that intersection, that curve, that Barksdale area, that telephone pole that's in the
Yes.
middle of the street, and, that sort of
Yes.
thing. So they have committed to doing that.
Yes, and as a matter of, this frontage here would also, there would have to be some type of improvements on, I don't know to what degree, but typically that's, whenever we have a subdivision application, and we're talking about, rough proportionality and that dual nexus and what types of dedications, typically that frontage of the property, it's usually will request any type of improvements if it needs it, and I don't know what it might be, I'm just going by what we typically do as a staff, is that we require any type of frontages are improved.
But up until this point, the developers can cram that stuff in there anywhere they want, add as many cars they want, and they're not required to do basically anything on the infrastructure. As we sit here tonight. That's got to change.
And I don't.
I don't know how to change it, but it's got
Yes.
to change.
Yes, I know you were asking me for opinion, because I've been, yes.
Yeah, we can't do it all. We can't, the city can't, we're not that, it's not our responsibility.
Yes.
They're throwing that stuff in there and selling it and renting it and all, and they're profiting from it, and then they run to us for the infrastructure improvement. At some point in time, it's not gonna work. But, that's something where we address it going forward, or we need to do something different.
That is definitely true. And I haven't created the document yet, but I'm creating my work breakdown structure, basically my Gantt chart of what projects that we're going to be working on for this entire year. And one of the things that I wanted to ride on the backs of the corridor study and doing the access management agreement is to actually improve everything that's related to transportation. And at least start heading down that direction where we can start addressing these types of concerns.
We can't do impact fee, can we? We're out there. We can't smile.
Well, that's, yeah, I think, if Ginger was here, she would chime in. That's what I was saying. We can't do that.
Yeah, she'd be going around down her chair right now.
It would be nice for the developer to come forward with a model. I'm a visual person. I want to see, kind of an outcome of what it's gonna look like, especially that intersection or that curve that it's terrible.
And yes, and I have recommended, that maybe more effort is placed on the concept end, similar to how you see in PUDs. But but it requires a little bit more financial commitment on their end, and it's basically, they're taking a chance. But that always helps out. It always helps out to have a little bit more on the concept side, with the rezoning applications.
But where we're at this stage, this developer, I mean, 99% chance they're going to develop it, but they could sell it to another developer and they're not held to any of that concept, right? They're just held to the zoning.
That's correct. And it only comes at the subdivision phase where those things are commitments that next developer will have to.
How soon do we see that happen?
Well, the underlying zoning will dictate what the density is, and there are, I mean, it happens fairly regularly where the developer will take it to a certain point and then sell off a certain portion of it. I mean, it happens fairly regularly, and they have to stick with what's been approved. So, I mean, Madison Town is a recent one. The Green Lane, I forgot what the name of it is. They changed it a couple times. But the one off on Green Lane.
The one in the back,
David
okay,
Boyce's.
they're trying to unload it now. It's, they've rolled in there, spent a lot of money now, this quit, and it's insane on there, so.
Yes. Any other questions?
Good discussion. Anybody else have anything to say? All right, let's move to B. This is an ordinance of the city of Shelbyville, Tennessee, to approve the rezoning of approximately plus or minus 1.54 acres owned by the city of Shelbyville Housing Authority, addressed as Elm Street and further referenced in Bedford County tax records as tax map 089A, Group C, Parcel 1, Lot Number 1, attached as Exhibit A and Exhibit B, Final Plat, from residential R3, medium density residential, to commercial 2, C2, general business, and repealing any ordinance or portion of ordinance in conflict therewith. This is property belonging to the Shelbyville Housing Authority. Federal. Do we have any questions on that at all? Anybody? Okay. All right. Let's move to C. An ordinance of the city of Shelbyville, Tennessee, to approve the rezoning of approximately plus or minus 1.17 acres owned by the city of Shelbyville Housing Authority, addressed as Elm Street and referenced in Bedford County tax records as tax map 089A, Group C, Parcel 1, Lot Number 2, and attached as Exhibit A and Exhibit B, Final Plat, from residential R3, medium density residential, to residential R4, high density residential, and repealing any ordinance or portion of ordinance in conflict therewith. Any questions about that? That's, again, the Housing Authority. And Mr. Gill's here representing the board here tonight.
No question, just a comment, because I was at planning.
Okay.
One of our planning members voted against that. Their concern was just the traffic on Tate already from the school. And I don't feel like that's the housing authority's fault. That's a school issue, but that's why there were some votes against that for those that weren't at that planning meetings.
Thank you. Any other thoughts? All right, let's move to the next one, and that is that E? An ordinance of the city of Shelbyville, Tennessee to approve, I've got some notes here. To approve, did we go to D? Yeah, I thought it was D. An ordinance of the city of Shelbyville, Tennessee to approve the rezoning of approximately plus or minus 0.64 acre owned by the city of Shelbyville Housing Authority, addressed as Elm Street, known as the Tate Center, and referenced in Bedford County tax records as tax map 089A, Group C, Parcel 1, Lot number 3, and attached as Exhibit A and Exhibit B, final plat from residential R3, medium density residential to commercial, C2, general business, and repealing any ordinance or portion of ordinance in conflict therewith. Thank you, Scott, for pointing that out. The Tate Center, I wanted to make sure that we were on the right one there. Now, all of this property right here, now you're talking about the school. Are they talking about the commercial property is going to be on the side street or on Tate, right there where the,
Commercial will be on Elm Street.
that's what I was thinking, yeah.
And then
Okay.
the tank center, we're just clearing that up.
Right here.
Because it was zoned R3 as well.
Yeah.
So we were just making it as what the present use like it is.
Okay.
So it's not, it won't be changing. Then the other would be, along
Now, your question was if, like when school traffic backs up and things like that.
Yeah, and what's mine is what the planning commission members, the school traffic backs up around Tate on
Right.
Elm there. That's not the housing authority's fault. That's the school's issue, so.
Be hard for them to do business when they're picking up children or dropping children off on.
they would respect the driveways, man.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Letter E, an ordinance of the city of Shelbyville, Tennessee to approve the rezoning of approximately plus or minus 0.114 acre owned by Curl Properties LLC and Joe M. Lambert Jr. on portion of 1817 North Main Street, referenced in Bedford County tax records as tax map 69, Group C, Parcel 3, and attached as Exhibit A and Exhibit B, final plat from residential R2, medium low density residential to commercial C2, general business, and repealing any ordinance or portion of ordinance in conflict therewith. Any questions on that? Tom's here if we have any questions. Anyone? Okay. All right, let's go to F. Some of these things we've been over before. An ordinance of the city of Shelbyville, Tennessee to approve the removal of the Belmont Historic Overlay on approximately plus or minus 0.44 acre owned by Billy Wortham on parcel addressed as 812 Belmont Avenue, referenced in Bedford County tax records as tax map 89J, Group F, Parcel 17, and attached as Exhibit A and Exhibit B, Belmont Historic District, and repealing any ordinance or portion of ordinance in conflict therewith. Questions on that one? I think the Historic Zoning Committee approved moving forward on that one. Okay, no questions. Let's go to G, an ordinance of the city of Shelbyville, Tennessee. This is talking about the same property, to approve the rezoning of approximately 0.44 acre owned by Billy Wortham on 812 Belmont Avenue, referenced in Bedford County tax records as tax map 89J, Group F, Parcel 17, and attached as Exhibit A from residential R3, medium density residential to residential R4, high density residential, and repealing any ordinance or portion of ordinance in conflict therewith. So looks like we're moving it from the historical, and then we're approving the rezoning of it for high density residential. Any questions on that?
That one was more controversial thing. Maybe Tom could speak to it real quick, just explain some of the argument on that.
Tom?
Sure. Let's see, is that, correct? Yes, 6 votes in favor and then 2 were opposed to it. And part of it was, and it might be helpful if I just briefly discuss how I actually do the analysis for it. But in essence, I created this criteria for analysis that has to do with the consistency with our adopted policies and maps, our goals for growth development, whether the change is compatible with the existing land use patterns and designated future land uses. The other aspects are whether or not it will create an adverse impact. But the biggest question, or I guess a concern, is that the Belmont character area there's a contradiction between that and the actual rezoning. So R4 is not a part of that character area. But when we look at the neighborhood, which is also part of the criteria, you have R4 higher density here. This is the this is 812 Belmont. You have the high density R4 here. You have a higher density R4 there. And in the zoning, you'll see that here's Belmont, 812 Belmont. You have R4 across the street, R4 here, and R4 in the back of these parcels. So it's surrounded by it. This is just showing the character area as the Belmont Avenue corridor character area. So the question was, I mean, for the size of the parcel, I believe the most that a multifamily triplex or quadruplex can fit on that property is 4. I believe it was 4. And just because of the land area doesn't permit more than that. Now, currently, this main house is a single family, and this little dwelling in the back here is actually serving as a duplex. So there's already 3 living dwelling units on the property. And if they maintain that, then there's no requirements for any type of infrastructure improvement. But if they go beyond that, which is the 4, they'll have significant cost in terms of sewer improvements because of the way that it's configured. It's just a little bit of this sewer line that's serving multiple properties in the rear as well as that one in front. And I don't, let's see, there were, what did I say? It was 2 that were opposed. The one commissioner that was opposed to it did not, even though there was an inconsistency or contradiction in our future land use map, no one at the time can recall, why that section was labeled the Belmont, but their opinion is that we shouldn't be contradicting the future land use map, sticking more closely with what the specific language of the future land use map. And so they didn't believe that should be an R4, even though the neighborhood might support it, that the idea behind the R4 was maybe to not allow any more expansion of the R4. So that was the controversy. So.
And the sewer improvement would be on the developer, right? The system wouldn't be on the hook for any of that money, or the city.
It would all be required by the developer.
Only if they put 4.
If they put 4.
If they stick with 3, it's fine.
If they stick with 3, it'll be, they can maintain that same, what the current configuration is. So.
And the home is sitting there. I was in the historical zone. I'm a member of that. And so they were talking about that home falling in. The one that's sitting there now is a safety concern and a security concern. And I see some folks shaking their head. They were there too. But that's the reason that house is falling apart.
Yes.
And they're afraid somebody's going to get hurt. So it's time to do something with it. So just kind of give you that background on that.
So once they take the house down, they will be putting R4 development all facing the highway, facing each other.
Yes,
Which is our historical avenue, really, has been for years.
Yes, and if I go back to this, most of the historic structures are, that fabric is gone in this section. Towards the northwest, you see all the historic. And so it would have made more sense to, if it was, if there was more historic around there, to preserve that historic character. And even now, if it goes to the R4 and they do multifamily, they will still have to conform to the design standards.
And that one across the street is probably the newer one. And I guess they had to rezone to do that one too. That's right there on.
Yes, and I don't know the history of that one, but yes, that was
Yeah,
constructed
that's
in
been,
2021.
5, 6 years, I guess, when they built that.
Yes,
That's apartments right there too. Yeah.
So they already told you for the old houses.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions? Good questions. All right, let's move to H, then, thank you, Tom. An ordinance of the city, Shelbyville City Council to amend Article 2 definitions, Article 6 supplementary regulations, exceptions, and modifications, and Appendix 1 table of uses of the Shelbyville Municipal Zoning Ordinance by updating Section 2.2 definitions, adding Section 6.4 Y supplementary regulations for transfer stations, and Appendix 1 table of uses to repeal any ordinance, resolutions, or part of an ordinance or resolution in conflict therewith. Any questions on that on the transfer station?
I do have a question too, Tom, maybe. Actually, this isn't even my question. It was given to me by somebody who, I didn't think of it, but if we allow these transfer stations in I-2 in the city, is there some language we can put in there so that trash from other municipalities doesn't end up passing through Shelbyville? So that we don't get a new company, say, come in and open a transfer station in I-2, and suddenly all the trash from Rutherford County is driving through the city of Shelbyville.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. That can be, yeah, I never thought about that because.
I didn't either. And then somebody asked me, and I said, that's a good idea. Maybe we could put something in there so that only stuff from within Bedford County or some kind of language to protect us from being the waste station for all the trash in Middle Tennessee all of a sudden, if we made it too easy.
Good idea. Very good.
I guess, what's the impetus for this change? Transfer stations are almost like landfills.
There's a
Really, really difficult to get permitted and.
there's a company, I guess we're allowed to say, there's a company coming into the county that's gonna offer us a savings as a city and the county if we allow them to open a transfer station. All of the county and city trash will go to this transfer station and then be transported out of the county. But again, if we let them do that, we don't want somebody to then have us be the transfer station for Murfreesboro, for Nashville, for,
Yes, so, currently in our municipal code, we have, regulations for transfer station, when the city performs that. And, according to the EPA, this is, pretty similar to their definition. It's basically considered a light industrial. But in our code, light industrial is anything that's contained within a building. So that's why the consideration was put it in I-2, which would allow certain activities to be used on the outside. But the I-2 has a higher required a lot greater lot area. And for privately owned transfer station, it's very similar to other recent text amendments where because it's not clear within our code, it was putting it into a category that was similar to landfills, which requires 50 acres of property. And for something like this, it's not that intensive of a use, but it is very consistent with a I-2 industrial zone.
Where is this?
The location that they're looking at is on Cedar King Road in the middle of all the industrial. And one of the provisions that I placed inside the supplementary regulations has to do with anything that's there's any other industrial zones to actually put in conditions if they're not located in the industrial zone, like limiting their hours and things like that. So. to minimize their negative impacts, their adverse impacts.
Give a map of that.
Not in here, but I'll make sure I have it in the slides for.
Is that all West Lane, top past high school?
I don't know if you can, search, or you can,
You can't do residential or anything around it.
there's no residentials around it, so.
In the past, we've been approached by companies to establish transfer stations. And I don't know what's changed from the past, but, you know, I hate to keep looking to the past, but it was like, they'll promise you anything. Get a permitted transfer station in, because these private companies, their full intent is to bring garbage from surrounding areas to a transfer station.
Yes.
And then send it to the landfill. It's more efficient than running their little trucks back and forth. So I can see, we can see where we can't really regulate where the trash is coming from very easily. But they can go around us at the state level, because they got a huge lobby. To.
Betsy, is that in your area?
Yes.
And the city of Shelbyville now gets a discounted rate
Here it is.
because we already have a transfer station and transfer our own, so.
Yes, and
It has
this,
to be a considerable savings, I would think, for the community to have a.
6 figures a year is what we were told.
yes, and, Buck,
6 figures a year is what we were told.
yeah, Buck said that, just in the fuel savings would be 30,000-40,000. But in, total savings, it's, well above 100,000.
Is that close to the city burn pit or city burn pit?
Yes, it's actually being used as very something similar to it. It just was not, there was not necessarily any kind of regulations on it, but this is the property right here.
It's not north of the school, is it?
No, but it's surrounded by, all this is industrial all the way around it.
But there is residential on Amos Smith and on Horse Meadow.
Smith.
Yes, and that was one of the questions that came up about, the actual traffic pattern for it. Because, there is residential, but for transfer stations, for the efficiency of the use, they will go and actually, Kate, if you could just, move the map up a little bit, or actually down, okay, there you go, to show railroad. They will exit down onto Cedar King to hit railroad and exit out this direction here, just for efficiency of, movement of the trash.
Yeah, actually, golf.
But wait a minute,
What kind of, regulations do you have as far as any kind of, odor?
What, now, say that again?
What kind of, does this have any kind of regulations that will curtail, noxious odors or smell, anything like that? Are they dumping trash and transferring trash right there?
They're consolidating it to put it onto bigger trucks.
Bigger
But
trucks?
if you go back to the supplementary regulations that I have.
You're supposed to keep like containers. Oh, is it that? Yeah.
Yeah, so all these, bullet points here is what was discussed with the pre-planning committee, and, everybody agreed that, this was, enough regulations to place on it. And, as you see, compacting and sorting, it's all, within, everything has to be cleanable, that it's enclosed within the space, and that there's no storage of it overnight. So, and discusses how it can be loaded, unloaded. And then, let's see, the types of waste that's not permitted, such as hazardous, industrial, medical waste, biological, no tires of any type, and then controlling traffic in there. There's a no solid waste being stored overnight. The sorry. The material recovery basically is a type of, it's recycling. So they can do recycling.
I would be for slow walking it. And visit some other communities that have these and get their recommendations on what kind of regulations and what comes down, what, if there are any horror stories, they come out after a few years of operation, things get lax and, that would be my recommendation if you're not in a, you know, we all want to save money, but at the same time, cut your nose off.
The restrictions, you're saying, are they giving us a window of maybe?
Let's see, their contract expires in April, of this year. And then, these supplementary regulations were pulled from, jurisdiction of Tennessee. So, and it actually a more stricter jurisdiction.
I'm like Henry, I'm glad that ain't my ward. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, but my concern is enforcement. I mean, you've got all these rules and regulations there. Who's gonna enforce it?
That enforcement will come down to either, that'd be either building or, with codes enforcement, but.
TDEP will be the ultimate.
Okay.
Well, yes, I mean, they are required to have a permit.
This issue is significant, not only across the state, across the country. And we're a member of the Interlocal Solid Waste Group.
Right.
Shelbyville's one of the founding members of it, is my understanding. The contract is scheduled to run out, as Tom spoke to, in April. Now, believe me, I understand not in my backyard, because nobody.
That's right.
But at the same time, something as we move forward on these discussions, where are we gonna take our trash? Because the contract goes away in April. So right now, we may have to take it as far as Huntsville.
Then Buck's already made statements that if something don't change, we're fixing to look at a substantial increase.
It's gonna be significantly expensive. So my apologies, Buck is on vacation. And next week, everybody will be back. We're all back to full strength. So we will be prepared to have a more detailed presentation and be able to answer more of your questions once our public works director returns.
Having this discussion on the transfer station has come up about every time we've ever had a new negotiation on the interlocal agreement for transfer, for garbage disposal. And I know, I don't want to repeat myself, but because we already had a transfer station, these other communities have had to build them and operate them. And I just would be surprised that they got it to the efficiency level where it could save us $100,000 a year or whatever that, and if it's that good, then why can't they take over our existing transfer station? That's what they wanted to do with the last. What, you know, I don't know, there's a lot of weird questions I would be asking.
Can I answer that too? Because in some jurisdictions, they do that as well. Like in Murfreesboro. Murfreesboro has the vendor underneath their public works. And, that's just one way. Our municipal code is very thin in terms of regulations of transfer stations, so.
Yeah, because we've had our own.
Yes.
We wouldn't allow anybody else, basically, so. I would, know our contract's up, we're part of the interlocal agreement. We're gonna have to be part of that. They're not gonna single us out, drop us like I have to take it. Because that's the same facility to transfer the garbage. Landfills.
I agree with Scott.
Wouldn't be hurried up, in other words, or
Yeah.
threatened, real threatened that you're not gonna have a spot for your garbage.
I agree with Scott. It definitely deems further discussion when everybody
Right.
at the table, we have to have a call meeting or whatever, make it happen.
Okay, so we won't be voting on this next Thursday.
I'll go back.
Okay. Sounds good to me.
I'd like to see some, slides of one of these operations, if that's possible. Is there one, where's one close to us, Tom?
I'll find one.
And I agree with Henry that we need to probably check with those folks that's already got one and how's it operate? What kind of problems you having, or is it working out all right, and all that kind of stuff.
We ought to go
Right.
if it's closed.
I don't want to jump in too deep, but without the city attorney here, I think that we have to take an action on it because it is an ordinance. And so I think we will either have to we will have to vote on it, or either to table it, defer it, or something. So it will be on the agenda. I'll double check that with Ginger, but I do believe because it's an ordinance, we will have to take some action.
Anyone else? All right, let's move to resolutions. We don't have any. Business items, I think they've taken that out. Surplus items, they're not ready for that yet. Purchasing and bid items, we don't have anything there. Appointments, I have been looking at that, and I deferred it from last month. I'm gonna defer it one more month, to make the decisions on those 3-year terms and 2-year. It's very important, and these are volunteers and they're giving their time, but we want the best knowledgeable people that make these decisions, especially on the planning commission and that board of zoning people. So I'm looking at that with a fine tooth comb and asking everybody else's opinion. I'm listening to folks to see what we need to do. Other business announcements, Ms. Lisa, would you like to make the announcement?
Yes, sir. Hold on, let me get my microphone back on. The, city hall will be closed on Monday, January the 20th, in observation of Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Monday's trash will be picked up on Tuesday, January 21st, with Tuesday's regular wrap.
Any other comments from anyone?
Are we gonna close, is it January 9th for Jimmy Carter Day? A lot of public buildings, the stock market, everybody's closing that day. I didn't know if we have to follow suit or what. There is.
I think that's up to the council.
First I've heard that.
Are the banks closed?
Let me look, see what day that is. January
I
9th.
noticed the post office is definitely closed, the stock market, a lot of federal stuff, I guess. Maybe it's just the federal.
January 9th, that'd be, oh, that's our
That's what
city
I'm
council
saying.
meeting.
Oh, it is. Nice.
Yeah.
Can't miss that. No.
Can't see that.
The rest of the room, go.
Protocol, protocol, I guess.
Had turkey.
Okay, all right, if there's no other business, I'm gonna, adjourn this meeting.